Next week, Jeremy Hunt will deliver what could be his last budget ahead of a general election, and he's rather stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea. On the one hand, a pre-election budget normally comes with some tax giveaways and the promise of brighter things to come. But on the other hand, he's been rather hamstrung by the OBR forecast, which gave him only about 13 billion of headroom. So, what should we expect? Well, with little wriggle room and stakes that are particularly high, the OBR might still come to his rescue. They'll issue a reforecast on the same day as he issues his statement, and it's widely expected that we might see some upside because of an anticipated reduction in interest rates. Like households, the government benefit if the interest rates fall on their cost of borrowing, and that could give him an extra £10 billion to spend. But what's he going to spend it on? Well, let's start with the question that my clients ask me the most, and that is, what will happen to capital gains tax rates? And the good news for now, at least, is that there's been no speculation at all about changes in capital gains tax rates. Although, hold that thought, because as we do get towards a general election, we know from 2019 that the Labour Party had some strong views on it as well, so we could well see that topic come back in vogue. But in the meantime, lots of the media speculation's been focused on income tax and national insurance. Now, Mr Hunt is going to be very keen to remind us that he's already reduced national insurance rates by 2%, and that's coming through as we speak. But it's speculated that he might either reduce income tax rates by 1% or take a further 1% off national insurance. Now, what's the difference? Well, an income tax reduction would be more widely applicable, and that's because it affects everybody. So pensioners pay it, as do investors and savers, whereas a reduction to national insurance is more beneficial to those that are in the workforce. What's the cost of both of those? Well, neither come cheap. So a 1% reduction in income tax would cost about 7 billion, whereas a 1% reduction in national insurance would be about 4.5 billion. So if I had to bet on it, I would say that it's more likely that we'd see a reduction in the national insurance rate. That's not the only thing that he can do, because over the last few years, we've seen tax take increase because of the fiscal drag of freezing the bands. And it may be that Jeremy Hunt decides to play it safe and see those bands normalise again in line with inflation, which would cost about the same as the income tax rates, the 7 billion, but it would be positioned as bringing things back in line had those freezes never taken place in the first instance. So not as headline grabbing, but definitely a possibility. But let's move on to inheritance tax. Now, inheritance tax is only paid by 4% of the population, and in total it raises about £7 billion, which in the context of £1 trillion of tax take is a drop in the ocean. However, it is really disliked, and if the Chancellor was to scrap it, it would definitely be a popular move with the party and a core group of voters. Now, of course, the Labour Party would say that that would be a tax cut that was just entirely focused on reducing taxes for the most wealthy. So will he be brave enough to bring in a radical change? And if he's not, what might he do? Well, I think we might see a change in the threshold, which is currently set at 325,000. We might see that move up to 500,000, or we could see a reduction in the rate. Now let's just touch on corporation tax quickly. The rate's already increased to 25% in recent years, and some of the levers that you might see the Chancellor play with, such as the research and development benefits and also the capital allowance regime, have already been pulled, as we saw that full expensing being introduced. So on the face of it, there's not a huge amount to play for there. But some of the legislation that's emerged over recent years in relation to BEPS 2.0 in particular is around the global minimum tax rate of 15%. And that could present an opportunity for the Chancellor to think about how to stimulate inward investment into the UK for large multinationals, and really telling them that the UK is a great place for them to be doing business. Now, there's so much more that we could talk about. Taxes on vapes, the fuel duty, there's lots of other things that could change. But for now, we may as well sit back and see what happens. We don't have long to wait. And let's just see if Jeremy Hunt can send out that life raft that the Conservative Party maybe feel they desperately need.